Hello and welcome to the Gag Wobble Challenge. If necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, yesterday, the 47th President of the United States, President Trump, um, back in the White House, delivered his State of the Union, even though it's not technically a State of the Union, but it's delivered whenever the newly installed president delivers a message to the joint house of Congress. It's called a State of the Union, but it's really just a message to the joint houses of Congress. And I think you'll agree with me. I mean, Trump seemed very exuberant. He seemed
Yes.
he was in a very upbeat mood, and obviously touting his great successes. I won by a lot, as he likes to put it. And naturally, he was singing the praises of all of his accomplishments in just barely more than a month. And he has obviously taken some risks, and and that he talked at great length about, which was the issue of tariffs.
Yes.
And he's now introducing tariffs in quite a big way, something he promised to do during the campaign. He said the most beautiful word in the English language. And he's now imposed tariffs on Canada, on Mexico, on China. Obviously, he's going to do it to the European Union. Now, the stock markets are spooked, obviously, by this. However, it's far too early to say. It's the jury is still out as to whether it will be successful or not. Nonetheless, he did spend a lot of time touting his successes with the tariffs, um, and and then the Democrats chose to be extremely sour. They took a very sour
They look like a
attitude.
very large, constipated group of people.
Yes, that's right. It's not even that they engaged in or very much booing. They didn't applaud anything he said.
Yeah, it's the cadaver caucus. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And so even when he did, as presidents always do when they do these States of the Union, they do these heartwarming, uh,
Yeah.
you know, cameos of people coming in. Oh, this person, had a terrible accident, and then
Oh,
now
that little boy that
exactly
recovered from cancer became an honorary secret.
that's
I
right,
mean, come on,
right,
Democrats,
right, right.
just relax. I mean,
Exactly.
enjoy
So
the moment for a young boy. I
right,
thought it was very moving.
I
I
thought yeah.
liked it. I'm sorry.
Exactly, and all presidents do this. And yes, it's very hokey,
Yeah, it
and
is.
but nonetheless, it's kind of heartwarming. Everybody
Yeah.
feels in some ways uplifted by
Well, I
the
mean, you don't have to, you can say this is just a machination by a politician. Well, it is, everybody. But
right,
can't you be happy for the young boy at the same time?
right.
I can be. It's
Exactly.
hokey. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. There was the hokey, and then there was the cadet, and then he announced that this cadet who had applied for West Point, his application has been accepted.
Good.
And from what we could gather, I mean, I kind of assumed, oh, this was all arranged beforehand. By the look of surprise on the boy's face, it sounded like it did come as a surprise to him. So it was
Well,
a
I
nice
mean,
moment.
he's a better actor than Zelensky.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. I mean, he's a young boy, and I mean, unless he's a really good actor, I mean, that looked like
Well,
genuine
George, I mean,
surprise.
it's hokey. These are political antics here. But Trump, he was laser focused on his base. And that was that was all intentional. He talked to people that voted for him.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And he did that. And then then there was the mother who lost a 12-year-old daughter who was raped and brutally murdered, and then he renamed a nature reserve after the daughter's name. And then one has to say that was quite very, very moving. I mean, when you
Yeah.
saw the mother and hey, he did this. I renamed this nature reserve in honor of your daughter.
Don't all of us want to be moved once in a
Right.
while?
Exactly.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, it was. Did I feel that maybe a sense of joy at a distance that mother felt? Yeah, I did. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm actually. It's showing that I have a little bit of humanity still left
Right.
in
No,
me.
that's right. That's right. And so the Democrats, no, because normally what happens, yes, the opposition, they don't do too much applauding. But when you get to the human interest stories, you nonetheless do applaud the human interest stories because, hey, well, that's not political. That's just an ordinary person. It's a heartwarming moment. But the Democrats absolutely didn't want to do any of that. Um, and he also brought up the issue of Ukraine because earlier in the day, President Zelensky had gone quite a long way. Well, let me see if I can dig this up. What he actually.
Well, I hope you're not going to read his Twitter chain. Okay.
Well, it's just I do want to read what he said in that tweet because Trump referred to that letter because the letter seems to be just a rehash of that same tweet. So let's just take a look at that. Um, because that here we have the so this is what he obviously wrote to Trump. He says, I would like to reiterate Ukraine's commitment to peace. None of us wants an endless war. Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than Ukrainians. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts.
Kiss the ring.
That's
Kiss
right.
the ring.
Strong leadership.
Kiss the ring.
That's right. So
I'm glad he got somebody to fix his English on this one.
that's he's not fixing them, but also he likes he put in the kind of words that Trump likes. Strong
Exactly.
leadership. Oh, yeah, yeah, that's me, not just leadership, but strong leadership. And then he goes on, we are ready to work fast to end the war, and the first stages could be the release of prisoners and truce in the sky, ban on missiles, long-range drones, bombs on energy and other civilian infrastructure.
Not original. We heard this recently.
Right, right. Yes, the French proposal. First of all, the French proposal was only for 1 month, so here he's not limiting it to in time. Um, Also, the well, I mean, the French proposal was, I think, a little vaguer. So, but the only difference, I think, is that that it's only one month because I don't know that the French talked about this the no attacks on civilian infrastructure and truce in the sea, and maybe that also meant ban on missiles and long range drones. The French maybe they refer to that as well. Then we want to move very fast through all next stages and to work with the U.S. to agree a strong final deal. Um, and
Well, I see hint, hint, hint all the way through. Security guarantees.
Right,
I
no,
see
I think
that
that's
still
what
being.
that he's clearly doing that, but he knows that is the only way. I mean, because what happened on Monday was that the Americans just simply said we're cutting off, um, with immediate effect, all military assistance to Ukraine. So that was there wasn't a formal announcement, but nonetheless, that's what the media reported, and it hasn't been denied by the administration. So that basically that was just that's it. We're not sending any more, pending whatever. Um, and then and so this is obviously this is his response to that apparent cutoff. And then he goes on, we do really value um, how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. And we remember the moment when things changed when President Trump provided Ukraine with javelins. We are grateful for this, the javelins, javelins, javelins. We got to, this is something that Trump keeps repeating.
Can everybody spell pandering here?
Pandering, yeah. Um, our meeting in Washington at the White House on Friday did not go the way it was supposed to be. It is regrettable that it happened this way. It is time to make things right. We would like future cooperation and communication to be constructive.
Well, I mean, Mr. Zelensky, what did happen? In your words,
Right.
what happened? Okay. This is, again, this kind of passive writing. I mean, well, what happened? I have my opinion. George has his opinion. Trump certainly has his opinion, but what's your opinion? How did that
Right.
happen?
Right. No,
That's a wimpy way of writing
well,
it.
it is a wimpy way, but the thing that he's saying here, which he hasn't said before, he says he's ready for he's taking seriously peace negotiations with the immediate peace negotiation. He just said, well, let's take a look at that. Let's exact formulation. Yeah, I mean, we are working. That's right. He says we are ready to work fast to end the war, and the first stages could be this: release a prisoner, truce in the sky, truce in the sea, no, bombs on energy, blah blah blah. If Russia will do the same, then we want to move very fast through all the next stages and to work with US to agree a strong final deal. Now, obviously, yes, he wants these security guarantees, but he hasn't put this, unlike Starmer and all the rest of them, he hasn't put this front and center, which caused all the problems to begin with in Washington. Um, Anyway, then he goes on regarding the agreement on minerals and security. Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time and in any convenient format. We see this agreement as a step toward greater security and solid security guarantees, and I truly hope it will work effectively. So that's what he
Okay.
wrote. Okay.
Okay, but this is like dealing with a peasant. Okay, I mean, don't you stay behind the line, and then they take a little tiptoe over it.
Right.
Okay, no, don't you go, and then they take another one. This is like dealing with a child. Okay, a step towards greater security and solid.
Right. Right. Well,
It's
but
it's it's maddening. What part
right,
of
right.
no don't you
No,
understand?
that's right. But the question then is, will this work? Will it work? Because he has to change the minds of the Americans. The Americans were obviously angry with him because he didn't seem to be serious about peace talks, and that he was demanding these security guarantees. So he hasn't said this here, and he said, "Oh, I'm ready to sign the agreement." So the question then is, will this work? Will this move um, Trump and his people? Anyway, but Trump did come speak about this during his State of the Union. Um, so this is Trump. I'm also working tirelessly to end the savage conflict in Ukraine. Millions of Ukrainians and Russians have been needlessly killed or wounded in this horrific and brutal conflict with no end in sight. The United States has sent hundreds of billions of dollars to support Ukraine's defense with no security, with no anything. And it says, "Do you want to keep it going for another 5 years?" This was kind of an amusing moment. Do you want to keep it going for another 5 years? Yeah, you would say. Pocahontas says yes. So apparently she nodded and said, "You want to keep it going for another 5 years?"
And
She nods. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
she was doing a quiet clap as
Yeah,
well.
that's right. That's right. Yes. Pocahontas is, I mean, that is funny because he just openly he calls her Pocahontas to her face. I mean, it's just there, and he does this. I mean, it's one thing to say it at a rally to his base, but actually in Congress, she's actually there, and it says Pocahontas.
There is no difference between a rally and a State of the Union address for Trump.
No, no, I agree. I think that his State of the Union very much resembled
Yes.
Rowley because I don't know how many times he said Biden was the worst president in
Oh, I
American
was going to
history.
comment on that. Yes, I mean there's never been a State of the Union address where you had such criticism of your predecessor
Oh,
or any of
never,
your former president ever.
never, never,
Okay,
never,
I
never.
mean I have to say it because I don't want to forget it. I think the most memorable line was I'm paraphrasing, but the punchline I think I'll get right is the Democrats saying I've always said we needed a new immigration policy. What they needed was a new president. brilliant. That was
That's
good.
right.
Whoever wrote that was good.
That
That's
was very, that's right. Because no, it was there because you remember, and we did several podcasts about it because the Biden was claiming this was in 2024 that we have to have a new legislation. I can't do anything about this uncontrolled flow of migrants into the country. We need a new law, and the Republicans are holding this up. Republicans taking their lead from Trump are holding this up, and of course the media immediately repeated, "Oh, the Republicans are pro-immigration because they refused to sign this law." And said, "No, we never needed a law. We didn't get the law, but it stopped. All we needed was a new president."
it's a good line, whoever wrote
Very
it.
good. It was a very good line. And he went down well. Everyone, everyone was amused by it. Yeah. So it says,
See, that is the talent the man has. He knows how he can feel the room, he knows the room, and he knows how he's got a comedic timing. He
yeah,
really does.
he does. He does. He really does have that talent. I mean, he's done television for many, many years, and he's done entertainment television, not just interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
I'm
but
sure he asked what the ratings were.
no, that's right. And that entertainment show that he did, which I never watched that.
I never watched that.
That was successful. That isn't easy to do. To do a show that is a big rating success. Anyway, Poker Hunter says, yes, 2,000 people are being killed every single week. More than that, they are Russian young people, they're Ukrainian young people. They're not Americans, but I wanted to stop. Meanwhile, Europe has sadly spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they've spent on defending Ukraine by far.
Very interesting stat. Yes.
Um, and then think of that. They've spent more money, more buying Russian oil and gas than they have defending. We've spent perhaps 350 billion, like taking candy from a baby. That's what happened. And they've spent 100 billion. What a difference that is. And we have an ocean separating us, and they don't. But we're getting along very well with them, and lots of good things are happening. We're getting along very well with them. This is classic Trump. Really, really, you're getting along very well. But um, Biden has authorized more money in this fight than Europe has spent by billions and billions of dollars. It's hard to believe that they wouldn't have stopped it at some point. Come on, let's equalize. You've got to be equal to us. That didn't happen. Earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians, he said. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. Regarding the agreement on minerals and security, Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time. That is
Well,
convenient.
everybody, and this is after his quick European tour. Okay, so he's recalibrating,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
we have to ask ourselves: did the Europeans cut the mustard? I mean, this is a rhetorical concession, rhetorical at this point. Okay, so I mean, how does he absorb that? Okay, is he trying to, using Trump's words, equalize the two? I'm not really sure it's going to work that way.
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, I think that the if he's serious, if he is serious to sit down and start negotiating, and I think that's going to become clear quite quickly that right, you're actually ready to start serious talks, then I think they will. I think they will start sending the military aid. I mean, I think that's. I mean, Mike Waltz even said that today in an interview on Fox News that if he's serious about negotiations, then the military aid will resume.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but the,
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
um,
That's my read. That's my
yeah,
read.
no, I think so, and that's But then of course it goes back to what we were saying is that well, and then what? I mean, that's all right. You can negotiate, but what are you going to negotiate? Because as far as one can see, it's hard to see where you can come to an agreement.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to have to be a template. I mean, you will get X, Y, and Z weapons contingent upon this, this, and this. And the trick is where they keep the Ukrainians to it. That's the problem here, because this is just kind of wading through it, kicking the can down the road. And this is a way that they want to make a fool of, I mean, not overtly, but covertly make a fool of Trump. You know, we had this big meltdown in the Oval. The Europeans come
Right.
screaming, and then we go back to business as usual. That's what Zelensky and
Right,
his guys want.
but insofar as one can figure out what the Trump plan is, I mean, what does Trump and his team want? I think they want an immediate ceasefire. They say basically we'll have a ceasefire on the line of contact, and then all the other issues, we can spend the next 20 years arguing about that. But basically, we just want it to stop, and then once it stops, Trump can say, well, I'm the great peacemaker. Where's my Nobel Peace Prize already? Now the problem that if it stops is that it clearly doesn't satisfy the Russians because
No.
they've still got a lot of issues there, but it also doesn't satisfy Ukraine. Zelensky can't just simply accept, well, I've now lost, 20% of my country. I mean, if he hopes to stay alive, you can't just, you can't just, I've just agreed to losing 20% of my country. And nobody, I mean, even if they try to remove Zelensky and replace him with someone else, who's going to want the job? I'm going to be the person who's going to agree to losing 20% of my country. They're going to say, I don't want this job. Zelensky doesn't want this job.
History is our guide, because when the Germans announced that they had agreed to an armistice in 1918 in November, um, who took over? It was the political party that had been trying for decades, that had been blocked from power, maybe not in cities and not in regions, but in national politics. It was the socialists.
Right,
So that was the ultimate
right,
FU gift.
right,
Okay,
right,
let
right.
the socialists
The
take care
social,
of it now.
yeah, that's right.
And
They
they were
carry it down. Yeah.
mauled. They
Right,
and essentially they were the origin of the Weimar Republic, and we all know how that ended.
right.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
and so
yeah.
George is absolutely right. I mean, they put themselves in such a pickle. Who in Ukraine would want to take over after Zelensky? I mean,
No, no,
this.
even nuts. I mean, anybody who takes over and says, well, I accept the loss of 20% of my country, he's going to be shot. He's going to be just shot dead. And there were just as in Germany, there were assassinations galore of precisely Germans who accepted the humiliating terms. Um, so that's obviously the issue, but
Well,
clearly,
let's take a small step back. Walt said that the way George and I read what he had to say is that arms would return flowing into Ukraine, but I don't think it's as simple as that. They're gonna want something tangible. I mean, you say you want show us that propose a sit down using intermediaries. I mean, it has to be more than just a tweet. They're not
no,
going
I think it
to.
has to be tangible. I have to sit down and start talking. But that's when the problems start arising. No, there have to be talks. So there have to be serious talks. Whichever. Either they're going to sit together at the same table, or there's going to be shuttle diplomacy. But there's going to have to be a willingness on Ukraine's part to engage in these talks.
Yes,
Um,
that's.
that's right.
I wanted to make sure everybody knows that's clear. That it has to be meaningful. It has to be
Right.
tangible.
Right, right. So that's it. So it's, either they're going to negotiate the same table, or there's going to be or there's going to be shuttle diplomacy. But either way, Lukashenko has come out and said, "Oh, I think Minsk would be a great place to hold these talks."
Wouldn't he? Everybody. That's where the initial talks before they were transferred to
That's
Istanbul
right.
after the start of the SMO.
Right, right. That's right. And then Peskov said something like, "Yeah, Minsk is a great place, because Belarus is a very friendly country to us." So yeah, okay. So I don't think it's going to be in Minsk. I think,
But George, just to put it into perspective, everyone, that was the venue after February 2022 when the special military operation started. Instantly, almost instantly, talks started. Think about it, George. Just think of the symbolic.
right, right.
All of these men and material loss on all sides.
Right.
just to sit back at the same
Right. Right.
table.
No, no, no. That's right.
It's extraordinary when you think about it.
Yes. No. No. That's right. They're not going to be in Minsk. I mean,
No, no.
particularly since the Americans are obviously going to be involved. I mean, in none of the previous talks were the Americans involved. So the Americans are obviously going to be absolutely front and center in these talks. So it's going to have to be a place that the Americans would regard
I know
as a neutral place.
it's a long, long, long shot, but I think a great mediator would be Viktor Orban. I really do. Okay, I
Yeah,
really do.
yeah. No, I think so. I mean, yeah, yeah, that's right. But I don't think
I
Orban.
think he has the intelligence. I think he has the stamina. I think he has the patience.
Right,
I
but
mean,
right. No,
yeah, I mean, it's a NATO country. That's the problem.
well, but I don't think. I mean, Orban could host the talks, but he can't be the media. The Americans are going to be the mediators. I mean, the Americans are going to take this over, and they're going to
Well,
be the mediators.
mediator. You know what I mean. Okay,
Right, that's right.
host.
But
You're
that's
right. You're right. You're right. You're
right.
right.
But
Host.
this whole
Host.
thing is an American
You're right.
initiative, and the Americans are
You're
going to
right.
run with it. Whichever way it goes, it'll be the Americans who are going to run with it. I mean, Hungary could host it. It's possible that because even though it is a NATO country, I don't think the Russians will raise any objections about
No, I don't either. I don't either.
Hungary being the host. It's a lot closer. I mean, it's physically a lot easier just to get to Hungary than it is to Saudi Arabia.
But I think that the initial talks, the bilateral talks, including the Americans and the Russians in Riyadh, the symbolism was very important. Is that
Right.
the Russians and the Americans see Europe in the rearview mirror. They're not players, okay?
Right.
And I think that that's why, like Dubai or Kuwait or
Right.
something like that. I think that's most
Right.
likely where it's going to happen.
Right. Right. Yeah. Anyway, minerals, and then I think then he says that's convenient for you. Convenient for you. I'm not sure for you. I think he means maybe to the Europeans. That's all because this is still Trump talking. I appreciate that he sent this letter. I just got it a little while ago. Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia. Then I've received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful? So he said that three times, as is Trump's won't. He said this three times. So he made no comment. He didn't say we're going to sign this agreement, this economic extraction agreement, or anything else. He just said, well, I appreciate this letter. And then, the last the missive from the Americans is Mike Waltz's interview at Fox News, and says, well, we can restart it, when they're serious about peace talks. And I mean, clearly, this letter that was written by Zelensky, it's the Americans. It's a very American oriented letter. So having spent all this time with the Europeans,
Yep.
is basically written a very American letter and very much focused on trying to
Because
wheedle his way into Trump's good favors.
after the Oval Office blow up with Zelensky, he needed hugs. He
Right.
needed hugs.
Right.
Okay. He needed affection. Okay. But at the end of the day, that didn't change his dilemma.
Right.
His dilemma is just worse. Okay.
Right.
Because hugs can only go so far. You're still on your own,
Yep.
and you really pissed off the guy. I
Right.
mean, you really, really did. And it shows how impotent the Europeans are. Is that what they have? Is that their currency? Hugging?
Right.
Really?
Right.
Taking a seat in 10 Downing Street, does that make your situation any better? No, it
Right.
doesn't.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And I think that it's very, very interesting because yesterday Ursula von der Leyen did her thing and said we're going to
No questions. No questions.
No questions.
Remember at the very end, she was no question. She closed her binder, no questions, and walked away.
She does like the authoritarian
she is.
bit. Again, unelected bureaucrat.
I don't. I just have this thing that she carries a riding crop with her.
I think so. Yeah, she
I
does.
just feel that she needs that grip
There,
you know, and she needs to hit it just to
yeah,
make sure
she
everybody knows.
does.
'Cause
She
she's a
does.
pretty frail person, you know?
I know, but some of these dominatrixes are, I think, are quite
Yeah,
frail. You know
yeah.
that it doesn't go necessarily with.
We very, very rarely see if she's wearing boots. Okay. It's always, like here up,
Right, right, right.
in
Yeah.
dress. Okay. But
I would bet
I think that
is
the riding
she
crop and the
comes exactly.
boots,
She comes from a very wealthy family. She married also a very wealthy husband. I am sure that on her estates there are many horses, and I think that she probably grew up riding horses. So I think she's very, very well aware of how to use riding crops effectively.
and she doesn't befriend dogs because
No, no,
dogs are have a purpose. They hunt. Okay. But
no.
she's not the type of person that has affection for dogs.
No, I
Okay.
don't think I no, I don't think so. But anyway, she came up with this idea of 800 billion euros,
Not her money,
not
everybody.
her money, 800 billion euros for additional military spending on defense for Europe. So this will be 800 billion outside of NATO because this is NATO. This is 800 billion, and she's going to come up with initially the initial sum is 150 billion euros, but while she talks about this defense, additional defense, but all of it is going to Ukraine. So it's not just like, oh, well, it's going towards Europeans' defense. It's actually all being shipped off to Ukraine. So here's the story with her announcement. EU pushes emergency plan to send 150 billions in defense loans to governments. And then she says, this is the latest response facing the most serious crisis within the Western Alliance since 1945 as the United States sides with Russia. This is one of the stupidest things that the media keep repeating, that somehow the United States and Russia are on the same side. No, they're not on the same side. Then
No,
they're
they're not.
absolutely not on the, United States position is, hey, we want a ceasefire right away. That is not Russia's position. So it's not siding with Russia. I mean, it's so dumb, and yet they all keep repeating this.
Europe is desperate for ways to fire up defense expenditure, which is paltry compared with American
That's right.
contribution. Well, that was all by design for the
Right?
last 80 years.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Um, and then this is in a speech on Tuesday, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said governments should be able to draw on 150 billions in loans over the next 5 years. This is not money that already exists in the budget. It would involve the Commission using its financial heft to borrow cash. It would then loan out to individual governments, and they would eventually need to pay back.
Is this
So,
obligatory, George?
well, that's a very good question. I was wondering that it's obligatory. Also, they have to. You borrow this money, you spend this money on military hardware for Ukraine. So you send this to Ukraine, and then you have to pay back this money to the EU. So having spent this money all on Ukraine, you have to pay this money back, and presumably on interest. I mean, they charge an interest on a loan. How's this a good deal? I mean, in what way is she offering this as a good deal for anyone?
Yeah.
Um,
So let's say Croatia takes 1 billion. Well, they don't really produce military hardware, so they're going to buy it from the Americans.
right.
They're going to send it to Ukraine, and then they have to pay
You have to pay.
for that.
So that's all gone. Oh, that equipment's all gone. And then you have, and
Wow,
then, oh, and
that's
now
wizardry.
you owe us this money. I mean,
You owe us this money. What did you get out of it? Debt. Because they're going to probably have to borrow money to pay
yeah,
off the
that's right.
loan.
Yeah, and don't forget the interest. You got to keep the interest payments going.
None of this makes any sense, George.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
if it is so perilous, and George and I have been watching this a long time. I mean, maybe not at this high pitch, but remember NATO is brain dead from brain dead
from
Emmanuel.
Macron. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, this is the worst crisis since 15 minutes ago, it
Right.
sounds like to me.
Right. Exactly. Um, Yeah, I think that's a very important point. I mean, ever since NATO's existence, there have been these crises, and it's always the worst, most serious, most existential crisis between the Europeans and the Americans. But they always make up, kiss and make up in the end, because it works too well for both sides to want it to break up. So, again, we've gone through so many of them from the 1950s with John Foster Dulles' agonizing reappraisal, the Suez crisis, the crisis of the nuclear weapons in the 60s, and then another crisis of nuclear weapons in the 80s. We go through this regularly, and they always kiss and make up. But every time, it's always this is the most horrific, most ghastly crisis of all.
And keep in mind, everyone, one of the reasons why I was thrown off Twitter initially is that I objected to Twitter's mandate that somehow we treat NATO as sacred.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that was the word, sacred.
Right. Sacred.
And I pushed back very hard on that because sacred has to do with, you know, like religious intentions
Right.
or something
Right.
beyond our temporal
Right.
understanding of the world. Well, over the last couple of days,
Right.
sitting members of Congress have said that the U.S. should withdraw from NATO. So I'm just prescient, huh?
Right. Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, what was verboten not
Right.
long ago is now in the public square in
Right.
the
Right.
Congress
Right.
of the
Right.
United
But
States.
none of that will ever get anywhere. And there have been in the past, maybe Thomas Massey, or who regularly puts forward this. Maybe it's Massey. Some congressman regularly puts this forward as a legislation. This
Yeah,
is
but
my
but but
bill.
George, it's part of the public conversation
Right.
before you get in trouble for it. Fine. George and I are in agreement. NATO isn't going to collapse anytime soon. Will it take a major hit as a result of all this? I think so. Okay. Is it going to disappear? I doubt it.
I doubt it too. Anyway, it says here the loans could be used to buy artillery, missiles, ammunition, drones, and anti-drone systems, and will also enable EU countries to send weapons to Kiev. But this is the point. Since no one is threatening anyone in Europe, nobody needs any of this. I mean, the point is artillery, missiles, ammunition, drones, and anti-drone systems. Who needs this in Europe? There's no threat. So therefore, the only reason to buy this is to send it all to Ukraine. So
Yeah,
that's
I mean, Austria is going to say, well, we're good in our neighborhood. Okay,
right,
we're good.
exactly. I mean, who's threatening you? I mean, you're exactly Austria. I mean, Belgium. Who's threatening Belgium? I mean, that's all of this. The Ursula von der Leyen and the rest of them were kind of whipping up this hysteria about this threat. Where's the threat? Who's threatening you? I mean, at least back in the day when they used to talk about the Islamic terrorism and war on terror, you can think, well, okay, well, these terrorists, they're kind of ubiquitous. They might just move into any country, blow something up. But then that's not even what they're saying now. They're saying it's Russia. Russia's some kind of a threat. How is Russia a threat to anyone at all in Europe? Um, and then Europe is ready to massively boost its defense spending, both to respond to the short-term urgency to act and support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security. Well, we'll see whether the Europeans are really ready to
Well,
start
I
spending
mean,
a lot more money.
objectively speaking, I mean, obviously I have very strong views of this, but is Europe under threat, George?
None, no threat, none whatsoever.
Oh, but except for illegal immigration, probably.
Exactly, that's the only threat. Those are the only threats. And as J.D. Vance said, well, there's obviously the threats to free speech. That's a real threat. But there's some enemy. The idea that somebody is threatening to invade you is nonsense. This is completely made up in order to fool the public.
I had Patrick Henningsen on my program yesterday, and I was reading some of the words coming from Starmer and defending our streets. So I asked Patrick Henningsen, who's in Plymouth in the UK. I asked him, would you look out the window? Are there Russian military forces in Plymouth right now? Because the current prime minister says that the streets of the
Right.
UK are threatened by Russia.
Right. Yes, exactly. The streets of the UK. And people say, well, I thought the streets of the UK were threatened by these rape gangs and these various all this through this mass immigration, the successive British governments have encouraged or turned a blind eye to, as they turned a blind eye to all these grooming gangs. Those are the threats to Britain. There's no Russian threat to Britain. I mean, it's just made up. It's just a lie of reckless, irresponsible governments who have done nothing to protect their people. Just made up this nonsense that there's a Russian threat. Anyway, to allow more spending, she will trigger the EU's national escape clause, and then France warms to the idea of seizing Russian assets in Europe. This is the new one. We're back to that. This is one of those hardy perennials. Every year about this time when the spring, weather, is, oh, how about taking those Russian frozen assets? Maybe we could turn them over to Ukraine.
Also, I mean, this is an admission that the European countries just don't have the resources and wherewithal. Right. So why don't we pick at somebody else's pocket?
Right, exactly.
I mean, this is an embarrassing admission. Right. Okay, it looks like they're scrambling. You know why, yeah. George? Because they are.
They are scrambling, exactly. She talks about this 150 billion euros. I don't think anyone's going to want to go. I'm going to borrow money, buy all this stuff we don't need, send it all to Ukraine, and then I have to pay you back with interest. That's not a good deal. So, hey, what about this 200 billion euros? I mean, maybe we can help ourselves to that. And then it says France is warming up the possibility of seizing Russian frozen assets to help Ukraine, said an official with direct knowledge, blah, blah. The official, who was granted anonymity to speak freely on a delicate matter, said members of the French government have privately discussed seizing the assets, including with their German counterparts, and potentially using them to guarantee loans for Kiev. But they can talk all they like. Their lawyers are still telling them, you've got a problem on your hands. I mean, if you do this, you're going to be hit with lawsuits in courts all over the world.
Forever.
And, even if in the European courts, they might rule in your favor because they're so politicized, but there are courts everywhere else in the world that are not going to rule in your favor.
What about the final outcome? Isn't the Russians would like their money back?
Yes.
Okay. And that's on the table. It's not yours to take off the table. Okay.
No. And then it says European authorities froze around 200 billion Russian assets. But he says G7 countries agreed last year to use the profits coming from those assets to back a $50 billion loan to Ukraine, but ruled out using the underlying assets directly as it risks breaching international law. So that's what they agreed on, using the profits, which again they cannot use. But they haven't touched the principle. French ministers have also publicly rejected the possibility for legal reasons, as those assets are the property of Russia's central bank. Economy Minister Eric Lombard told France Info that as France is not directly at war with Russia, these assets cannot be seized, as this would be contrary to international agreement. But even if France were at war, they still can't they can freeze the assets, but they can't use them for any purpose they deem fit. So they,
I mean, even Iran's frozen.
Exactly, they were frozen, but you can't make use of them. I think the American courts did that, but that was again violation of international law.
They took, there was a slice of it that were given.
A slice of it, terrorism, to victims of.
Yeah, that was, what was it? Obama gave 60 billion to the mullahs, and all. I remember Sean Hannity just was banging away about that, and he had no idea what he was talking about. Right. It was their money.
That's them, exactly. And then you could go on. Trump's decision to pause military aid to Ukraine and seeming nonchalance about Russia's history of violating peace agreements have prompted renewed interest in the idea of leveraging Russian frozen assets. I like the way, this is
so cavalier. Can you explain? Can you elaborate?
It's
I mean, talk about being nonchalant.
right, exactly. I mean, we're so used to this now that the way news reports just blend into editorializing. Gradually we're not even noticing it of how they're making all kinds of dubious assertions, and then you think, hey, I thought this is supposed to be a report, not an editorial. Russia's history of violating peace agreements. Well, you can say all that, but it doesn't make it true. Um,
Can you think of one?
I can't think of it. I can't think of it. And then but just simply they just casually toss these things out. Guardian does this. The New York Times does this, and but they never have to actually explain themselves and present any evidence. Baltic and Nordic countries, Russia's neighbors, think the money should be handed to Ukraine immediately. I really like that because it's like taking somebody else's money. I think we should just take it immediately and give it to Ukraine. Oh, can we have a slice as well before you
Well, I mean,
hand it over?
what's kind of curious about that, who would be giving it to them directly? Because then they would be culpable legally.
Yeah,
Okay. I mean, the Baltic and North. I think you should give it.
yes, that's right. Yes.
But we won't do it. Okay, but I think you should do it.
Um, France, however, is only considering using those assets to guarantee more loans to support Ukraine. And then the UK government has backed using frozen assets to support Ukraine. And while Germany has opposed that option, the government of incoming Chancellor Friedrich Merz could change course. And then, there's a Norbert Röttgen, he's one of these real CDU hawks, called for using these assets to support Kiev. And then again, and the Financial Times echoes this. Europeans move towards seizing 200 billion euros of Russian
Well, I
assets.
mean, George, I mean, Europeans move towards seizing 200 billion euros of Russian assets, and they want a seat at the table? You just pickpocketed me, and you want to sit next to me now?
So that's a very good point. That's exactly. You want a seat at the table, and you're planning on seizing, yeah, essentially, yeah, stealing somebody else's capital. But I mean, but that's even when we had Starmer the other day talking about British boots on the ground and British planes in the air. And again, you want a seat at the table, you're actually threatening further war, further violence. You're trying to provoke further conflict, and then you want a seat at the table. I mean, how does that work? I mean,
Well, I mean, George, victors determine who's sitting at the table.
well, Victor,
Okay.
yeah, but you have to be committed to peace. You have to be committed actually serious negotiations. I mean, and I think that's what the Americans were telling Ukraine. You have to first of all commit yourself that you're really serious about this. It's like the psychoanalyst who tells a patient, I can only work with you if you're ready to take this seriously. And so again, only if you're ready to take seriously peace talks do you get a seat at the table. But the Europeans, the British are not serious about this. They're just, hey, I want a piece of the I want a seat at the table.
Well, it's very interesting, everyone. George and I have talked about Yalta, and and we're living in the last embers of the Yalta world, because it's now we're seeing a major paradigm shift, particularly for the British. I mean, that was the last really big geopolitical conference
Right.
that created the world we live in now. But we're approaching another one, hence the Yalta 2.0.
Right.
George,
Right.
guess who is not going to be at
No,
that table?
I think that's it. It was very much the British simply because they were there at the beginning. But even by the time of Yalta, it was only really a kind of a sentimental attachment to the British that they got a seat at the table. It was just because, oh well, you started the war in 1939, and so but it was already not the big three. Britain was not along anymore the big three, but it was a kind favor. Now, no one's going to be doing any favors for the British. So anyway, this is basically this is the Financial Times says the same thing. Europe's biggest powers are swinging behind efforts to seize more than blah blah. France and Germany, long opposed to a full-blown seizure of the assets, are discussing with the UK and other countries.
But everyone, ask the most important question here. Is this going to move the
No,
needle? Oh, we get this money. It's good. Ukraine will be saved.
that's right. It's not. It's not
They'll
going to
be
do
pushing.
anything.
I mean,
No,
it's never explained how this
no,
money is going to change
no.
anything.
It doesn't, and that's the point. That's why they're not interested in peace. That's what, well, how can we get more money to Ukraine? Just like with the security guarantees, that we're not actually interested in negotiating anything. We're just interested in how can we get more troops into Ukraine? How can we ensure that there is no peace? That's all this is about. How can we sabotage any possibility of peace? And that's why there's this frenetic activity. What is it? Why this frenetic activity on the part of the Europeans? Because of Trump. They're trying to, how can we hobble Trump? How can we prevent any kind of a peace agreement? And then here's, French officials have discussed this proposal, and but this is where I thought, I just want to see this one um, where we got the Friedrich Merz. This Germany's chancellor in waiting, Friedrich Merz, has indicated he would consider backing a proposal involving seizing frozen Russian assets. Merz is speaking with caretaker Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Wednesday to align positions ahead of the summit on Thursday. The reason I wanted to emphasize Merz, he seems to be a completely nutcase. I mean, I think he's a man absolutely unsuitable to be chancellor of Germany, and you can see why. Really, he's a massive political failure. He's been a big political failure all his life. I mean, he was outmaneuvered by Angela Merkel back 20 years ago. He really has no idea, and he comes into power, and he's already a lot more belligerent than Sergeant Scholz. Scholz at least understood the German people are not with him. They don't
Oh,
want this war.
Joy, you're not saying that we're going to miss the sergeant.
Well, we're not going to miss Annalena Baerbock.
Baerbock.
No, we're not going to miss
Yeah,
her. But
Europe's Karen.
exactly, Europe's Karen. But Scholz at least understood the German people really, really don't want to get into a war with Russia, but Merz I think doesn't get this, and I think Merz is heading towards disaster. I think
Okay.
this government may not last for very long.
Okay. I always like ending on notes like that. Okay. Because, I will end up have a hard break coming up here, but I think I can speak for George with confidence is that Europe has no diplomats. They don't understand
Right,
diplomacy.
right.
Europe used to present the world with some brilliant geopolitical minds, but we don't have anybody there now. No one, no one. Okay. And then when you have an election and you get the new person in, they're just as bad or worse.
That's right. That's right.
All righty,
Yeah,
everybody.
all
This is
right.
the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. This is Wednesday. George and I will be reconvening on Friday. And then,
And
of course, next week, we'll be having our live stream at 10
yes,
o'clock Eastern Time.
that's right. But before that, tomorrow,
Tomorrow.
3 p.m. Eastern Time, please join me. Come with comments, criticisms, and suggestions. And I think about these dogs. You can actually hear them. They're angry. They're in a bad mood. These that tip jar situation is just red rag to a bull. So if you have a few bob in your pocket, whip them out into the tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology, and above all, we just keep these dogs a little bit calmer. I mean, it's hard work. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.